Two basic questions we'll explore in this video are, number one, what is economics, and two, why should we study it? Put in simple terms, economics is the science of human action. It is similar to psychology in that it studies human beings, but rather than studying man's thoughts and feelings, economics focuses on man's actions and the consequences that arise from those actions. Knowledge of economics is made necessary by scarcity, that arises because our wants are all but unlimited, but the resources needed to fulfill those wants are not. In other words, they are scarce. If this were not so, we would never need to make any choices in life. Everything we could possibly want would just magically appear. The science of economics teaches us the true consequences or costs of our choices. But is economics a science? Well, yes and no. If by science you mean the use of scientific method, then economics is not a science. The scientific method used by scientists in fields such as physics, chemistry, and biology is also known as inductive reasoning. With inductive reasoning, one starts with observations or experiments and then works toward a conclusion or general theory. While inductive reasoning has its uses, it also has one major drawback. You are always left with an uncertainty, or theory, rather than a fact. Scientists are continually discovering that old theories were wrong and coming up with new theories that better fit newly discovered evidence. No matter how much evidence you collect, though, you never really prove anything. Don't get me wrong here, because scientific method does have its uses, but it is of no use in the field of economics. First, unlike a chemist or a physicist, the economist cannot perform controlled experiments. The variables are too numerous to control for, and the subjects of your experiments, people, continually change and adapt in your attempt to manipulate them. Secondly, there are the ethical and moral issues surrounding such manipulations. Well, then how does one do economics? While some economists subscribe to the notion that inductive reasoning can be used in the field of economics, proper economics is about the skillful use of deductive reasoning. Deductive reasoning requires no observations or experiments. While we can collect economic data to illustrate the results of our analysis, the data itself neither proves nor disproves anything. Deductive reasoning begins with or is premised on what are called axioms. Axioms are statements that logically must be true by the very nature of both language and objective reality. Once we discover these axioms, we can use the logic to apply them to understand our world. This is a simple example of deductive reasoning. The axioms or premises are 1. All baboons like bananas, and 2. Lucy is a baboon. If these two premises are correct, then Lucy must like bananas. I do not need to prove this by observation or experiment. I know it a priori, or prior to any observation or experiment. Of course, this assumes that our premises are correct. We don't know, for example, whether all baboons like bananas, and I have to apply these premises logically to arrive at a conclusion. Economists are not infallible. We must continually examine our premises and check our logic. Our confused penguin here is an amusing example of faulty logic and perhaps a questionable premise. Are all penguins black and white? Does the fact that old TV shows were filmed in black and white have anything to do with penguins? Though this example is rather silly, we'll look at similar examples of such thinking in economics. One example, during the Great Depression of the 1930s, there was high unemployment. Unemployment went down during World War II. Therefore, wars somehow cured depressions. While many people believe the chain of reasoning, and some that even hold doctorate degrees in economics, it is just as ridiculous as our penguin friend here. More on this later. The famous 20th century economist Friedrich von Hayek once noted that the curious task of economics is to demonstrate to men how little they know about what they imagine they can design. If economics has anything to teach us, it is humility. Economic laws or principles are as timeless and immutable as the laws of physics, and one defies either set of laws at his own peril. A man who jumps out of a window believing that the laws of gravity do not apply to him will very soon and painfully find out that the law of gravity does apply. Similarly, if men wish to live prosperous and peaceful lives, they must respect economic laws. Political efforts to manipulate or get around these laws inevitably lead and will lead to disaster. In the next video, we'll examine some of the basic axioms that will form the foundation for the rest of the course, and that lie at the heart of economic law.